the Black Legend, Native Americans and the Spanish Conquest. What do you think of when you hear the words colonial America? For many, it conjures images of pilgrims, the Mayflower, or early British settlements like Jamestown. Yet, before these iconic stories began, another European power had already left an indelible mark on the continent. The Spanish, driven by ambition and religion, embarked on expeditions that forever altered the lives of Native Americans. This is a story of survival, resistance, and the complexities of human history. A land of abundance, North America before colonization. Long before European ships arrived, North America was home to civilizations as varied as its landscapes. From the towering redwoods of the Pacific Northwest to the arid deserts of the Southwest, indigenous peoples thrived by adapting to their environments. In 1491, new revelations of the Americas before Columbus. Author Charles C. Mann debunks the myth that the Americas were sparsely populated. He estimates that the continent may have supported 60 to 100 million people, many of whom developed sophisticated societies. For example, the ancestral Puebloans built intricate cliff dwellings in Mesa Verde, Colorado. The Mississippian culture constructed Cahokia, a city whose earthen mounds rivaled the pyramids of Egypt in size and ambition. Native Americans didn't merely adapt to their environments, they shaped them. The Great Plains, often considered pristine wilderness, were carefully managed through controlled burns that encouraged the growth of bison-friendly grasslands. This harmony between humans and nature created ecosystems of incredible biodiversity. The arrival of the Spanish, myths and motivations. When Christopher Columbus landed in the Caribbean in 1492, he believed he had found a shortcut to Asia. But what he inadvertently discovered was a vast new world ripe for exploration and exploitation. By the early 1500s, Spanish conquistadors, motivated by the promise of gold and the spread of Christianity, began pushing into North America. Hernan Cortez's conquest of the Aztec Empire in 1521 and Francisco Pizarro's defeat of the Incas in 1533 emboldened Spain to expand further. In Florida, Juan Ponce de Leon searched for the fabled Fountain of Youth, while Hernando de Soto led a brutal expedition across the southeastern United States. De Soto's journey, chronicled in the account of the Gentleman of Elvers, was marked by violence and greed. His men enslaved Native Americans, looted villages, and spread diseases that would decimate populations for generations. The silent killer, disease, and demographic collapse. One of the most devastating impacts of European colonization was the introduction of Old World diseases. Smallpox, measles, and influenza swept through indigenous communities with horrifying speed. Historian Alfred W. Crosby, in his seminal work The Columbian Exchange, describes how these diseases acted as biological weapons that Native Americans had no immunity against. By the late 16th century, some regions had lost up to 90% of their populations. A catastrophe unparalleled in human history. This demographic collapse not only wiped out millions, but also destabilized entire societies. Leaders and elders, repositories of cultural knowledge, succumbed, leaving younger generations to grapple with survival in a rapidly changing world. Conquistadors and missionaries, two faces of Spanish colonialism. The Spanish approach to colonization was twofold: conquer and convert. While conquistadors like Cortez and De Soto sought wealth, missionaries aimed to save souls. In California, Junipero Serra, a Franciscan friar, established a chain of missions that stretched from San Diego to San Francisco. These missions introduced European agriculture and Catholicism, but often came at a steep cost. Native Americans were coerced into abandoning their traditional lifestyles, and many died from overwork or disease. Yet, not all Spaniards condoned such practices. Bartolomé de las Casas, a Dominican friar, became one of the earliest advocates for indigenous rights. In his book A Short Account of the Destruction of the Indies, he condemned the brutality of his fellow Spaniards, writing, "Their reason for killing and destroying such an infinite number of souls is that the Christians have an ultimate aim, which is to acquire gold, cultural clashes, land, gender, and religion." The encounter between Native Americans and Europeans was not just a military conflict, it was a clash of worldviews. For Native Americans, land was sacred and communal. It wasn't owned, but shared among the community and passed down through generations. The Spanish, however, viewed land as property to be exploited. This fundamental difference often led to violent disputes, particularly as settlers encroached on indigenous territories. Similarly, gender roles diverged significantly. In many native societies, women held positions of power. Among the Cherokee, for instance, women controlled agricultural production and family inheritance. The Spanish, steeped in patriarchal traditions, struggled to reconcile these differences. Religion, too, became a source of tension. While missionaries sought to convert Native Americans to Christianity, indigenous peoples often resisted. Many blended Catholic practices with their own, creating syncretic traditions that survive to this day. The veneration of the Virgin of Guadalupe, for example, reflects a fusion of Catholic and Aztec beliefs. The Black Legend, separating myth from reality. The term Black Legend originated in the 16th century as a way for Spain's rivals, particularly Protestant England, to portray it as uniquely cruel. This narrative emphasized atrocities like the enslavement of Native Americans and the destruction of indigenous cultures. Bartolomé de las Casas's writings fueled this legend, providing vivid accounts of Spanish brutality. Yet, some historians argue that the Black Legend oversimplifies history. Other European powers, such as the British, French, and Dutch, also committed atrocities against Native Americans but often escaped the same level of scrutiny. Resistance and resilience, stories of survival. Despite immense suffering, Native Americans found ways to resist colonization. The Pueblo Revolt of 1680, led by a spiritual leader named Pope, is one of the most famous examples. For over a decade, the Pueblo people successfully drove the Spanish out of New Mexico, reclaiming their land and traditions. Resistance wasn't always overt. Some tribes adopted European technologies, such as horses and firearms, to strengthen their military capabilities. Others used diplomacy to pit European powers against one another. But perhaps the most enduring form of resistance was cultural survival. Through storytelling, ceremonies, and art, Native Americans preserved their heritage in the face of overwhelming odds. The enduring legacy. What can we learn? Today, the legacies of Native Americans and Spanish settlers are deeply intertwined. Spanish influence is evident in the architecture of the Southwest. The names of cities like Los Angeles and Santa Fe, and even the food we eat. Meanwhile, Native American contributions, such as corn, tomatoes, and chocolate, have enriched diets worldwide. Yet, the darker aspects of this history remain. Land disputes, cultural erasure, and systemic inequalities continue to affect Native communities. As historian Roxanne Dunbar-Ortiz argues in An Indigenous Peoples' History of the United States, understanding this history is crucial for addressing present-day injustices. Conclusion: a mirror to the past. The story of Native Americans and the Spanish isn't just a tale of conquest, it's a reflection of humanity's capacity for both destruction and resilience. By examining this history, we can better understand the complexities of cultural encounters and the enduring impact of colonialism. Ultimately, the past isn't just something to be studied, it's a mirror that challenges us to build a more just and equitable future.